Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't break or anything.
No, it doesn't. You're good.
It's a bit delayed.
Yeah.
How late is it?
I don't know.
How late is it?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, but vocals.
Oh, okay.
You broke a bit. You're breaking.
All right.
Hello. I'm not hearing any. No. 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 Hello. That's mic. Mic. Yes. Hello. 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 Yes. Yes. make it like this. Kayaknya pun cakep dia.
Hello, morning everyone. Apa yang kuat? Hello, testing, test mic, 1. Hello, testing, mic, 1, 2, 3. Ya, tidak harus sini aja.
Testing 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. 1, 2, 3. Mic test 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Mic test 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2.
test. Mic test 1, 2, 3. Mic test. Clear? Yeah. Mic test 1.
Right. Rooms are open, so you may proceed to your respective room.
Hi teacher. This is Raymond. Which room is Miri versus Padawan again?
Miri Padawan's room 1, room 2 will be Kuching versus.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Hello to all debaters. Before we officially begin, please type your full name in the details as given in the chat box. Hello, am I audible? Am I audible? Okay. Debaters, please make sure to turn on your camera.
Yes.
Thank you. Welcome to semi-finals of Virtual English Language Debate State Level. I am Previously Peruan, Speaker of the House and your timekeeper for today. You're advised to frequently check your chat box as I will notify the timing there. Our panel of adjudicators for today are Mr. Revan TJ. Next we have Mr. Kwei Wei Kwang. Last but not least is Mr. Alex Wong Siong Ning. On behalf of members of the House, I extend a warm welcome to all the adjudicators. Before we begin, let's invite the government bench from Lawas and opposition bench from Kuching to introduce themselves. Let's begin with the government bench.
Am I audible? Hello, I am Genevieve John. I will be the Prime Minister for government. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I am Rufti and I am the second speaker for the government bench.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lukti, and I'm the government whip.
Thank you. Now let's invite the opposition bench to introduce themselves.
Hi everyone, I'm Shana and I'll be the first speaker on the opposition bench.
I'm Cruz. I'm the second speaker for Kuching.
I'm Benson and I'll be the whip speaker for Kuching team.
Thank you to all the speakers. Here are the general rules for the debate. All speakers are given 8-minute speech. Only 4 minutes are given for reply speech. Point of information can be offered only after the first minute and before 7th minute of your opponent's speech. You are advised to be aware of the following conditions regarding disconnection. For the first disconnection, the timer will be stopped from the last word heard by the adjudicator or runner. The timer will only resume once you have returned to the room. For the subsequent disconnections, the timer will continue running while you are disconnected. If you experience a prolonged disconnection, upwards of 1 minute, the adjudicator may act on the issue. He could end your speech before you reconnect or re-instruct one of your team members to continue your speech. Make sure that you mute your microphone if you are not speaking. Without further ado, I call this House to order on the motion. The House prefer a world in which there is no formal criticism and awards for art. Let's invite the Prime Minister to begin her speech.
A very good morning to Madam and Mr. Speaker, esteemed timekeepers, speakers of the opposition, ladies and gentlemen. This House prefers a world in which there is no formal criticism and awards for art. Before I proceed with our arguments to convince you that the motion today must stand as it is, allow me to specify the roles of my ministers. As a Prime Minister, I will first provide the definition of key phrases in a motion. I will then present the government's first argument based on a keyword individual perception. My Deputy Prime Minister will rebut the misleading arguments presented by the opposition and present 2 more arguments based on the keywords encouragement and confinement. My third minister will not be presenting any new arguments, but will rebut all the misleading arguments presented by the opposition and reaffirm the government's case line. Members of the House, allow me to define the key phrases in the motion. The first key phrase I would like to define is formal criticism and awards. Formal criticism and awards can be defined as official indication of the faults and official prize in recognition of excellence by influential organization. The second key phrase I would like to define is art. Art can be defined as the expression of human creative talent, including creative and performing arts. Our overall definition is, as this House prefers a world in which there is no official indication of the faults and official prize in recognition of excellence for the expression of human creative talent, including creative and performing arts. Ladies and gentlemen, we, as a government, would like to ask this House to uphold the motion today, which is this House prefers a world in which there is no formal criticism and awards for art, as we believe that art is an abstract and therefore shouldn't be confined into a limited scope where creativity is not encouraged. Our mechanism today will be formal criticism and awards only include those by influential and official organizations like the Grammy Awards, Oscar, and etc. So criticism and awards within the education syllabus are not counted as a formal criticism and awards. Ladies and gentlemen, I have laid the foundation by defining the motion. Now I will lay the first brick by launching into our first point. Our argument is based on a keyword individual perception, namely, formal criticism and awards for art represents only the perception of the minority in an organization, not the individual perception of the society. Some may be bad, some may be good, but all have different individual perceptions.
PI, ma'am.
Accepted.
Okay, so you've said that these professionals don't have the experience, but please explain as to how these people, when they're particularly involved in these things such as Oscars, when they have been in this movie industry for the whole time, how are they not professional enough to give comments on your product?
They only represent the minority. They do not represent the whole world. You think everyone will have the same opinion? Yes, they're professional, but it doesn't mean that everyone would agree with them. So I'll continue on with our argument. For example, the Grammy Awards is an award ceremony for artists. And just know that artists can also be musicians, actors, and mostly from the entertainment industry. Even if you win the Grammy Awards, it does not necessarily mean that your art is good. There may be people or even a whole fan base that disagrees with the judges and spectators' choice. Even if you lose, there are still many people who prefers your art than the winning party. It really depends on their individual perception. As for the Oscar Awards, that are mainly for actors, also do not decide that if your act is good. Like I said, people could prefer this than that. A bonus to add, not to mention that these awards could also easily be manipulated and rigged. Companies can buy votes. I'm taking one of the biggest companies in Korea as an example. Just around 4 years ago, and even recently, they got into a huge scandal by rigging this particular group in an award ceremony. Even more of this rigging would affect the industry, making them believe that to win an award, you need money to be successful. This small group of people from the organizers do not meet the true definition of individual perception. Members of the House, here today I have substantiated my case on our stand that this House prefers a world in which there is no formal criticism and awards for art, as we believe that art is abstract and therefore shouldn't be confined into a limited scope where creativity is not encouraged. With this, I rest my case. Thank you.
Speaker spoke for 6 minutes and 30 seconds. Now,
to see, so that they won't, so that these artists or these companies won't actually get in trouble at the end of the day. That's why we say that actually having these formal criticism, it's actually some sort of a safety net for these people to jump right into, to know where they're flaws, to know where they can improve. And this is very important in our work today. Now, they also mentioned about how even if you win, you are not good, and even if you lose, you are not bad. Number one, this is actually not very fair to the people who have worked very hard to get to where they are, and to the people who didn't work at all and they lost for a reason, right? So the reason why they win is because the general public and the majority of the people actually like their work. This happens in like big award shows, right? And you have to understand that there are many procedures and that the results are not given simply, right? So everything comes down to this, and it's very important later. Okay, now let me actually go into a bit more characterization. Number one, why do we have this motion in the first place, and what is the problem with status quo? Okay, now this motion is here because of the spike of hate speech in our community towards these artists, right? The issue of this hate speech, it has actually spiraled into harming creators, especially because they are the most well-known people and they are the easiest people to target. Status quo looks like artists going to award shows and also having articles online written by critics that study heavy literature. And the outcome of this varies between the positive and the negative. And today we will prove to you why having a world without these things will ultimately bring more harm than good. Now, let's talk about formal criticism and what it actually looks like. Let me paint you a clearer picture. This looks like formal critics giving an in-depth run-through according to the way they learn literature to understand and analyze the message behind the art to give it even more meaning. Third, awards. Every movie, every song, every piece of art is like joining a competition on its own, right? Once it comes out. Companies and actors are always doing their best and they have the bigger incentive in order to win these competitions to help their career. That's why we say all of these things are very, very important in our world today. So before I jump right into my arguments, let's go into our yardsticks and basically which side our burden of proof, right? Basically, number one, which side better addresses the issues of hate speech, and number two, which side better creates a world where art is appreciated. Okay, but before I jump into my arguments, yes, PY. One, two. All right. Okay. So arguments. First thing I'm going to be talking about recognition and also mentioning about the big corporates, right? So recognition. How does recognition actually work when it comes to formal criticism and awards, right? Okay, these memes are actually very well known all over the world. And if you say the Grammys, everyone will know what you're talking about, correct? They offer a certain amount of like prestige towards this field. And when people subscribe and they know that their favorite artists actually won these awards or are getting featured on these formal critic websites, it actually makes the general public happy. As opposed to if we didn't have this in the first place, no one would know anyone and it would be very messy society, right? So why is recognition so important? Even if the critiques or even if the feedback is not all fun and good, we say it just leaves more room for improvement for these artists because they have the incentive to please the consumers in order to generate more revenue and in order to have self-validation in the future. This is not just about a money game, but it's also about to appreciate these artists as people and so that they can be happier with themselves, right? We are happy, they are happy, everyone is happy. What is the impact of this recognition? Say, if we are able to remove these means, if we are actually going to remove these means of recognition on site government, the fame that these people will get will decrease by a mile. This is detrimental because the human nature of people is to want to be validated and to want to be seen and to want to be appreciated. So, sure, we will still have discourse and online discussions about art, but we say that this is very different as it does not magnify the effect towards artists. And I'm going to be talking about this in my next point right now. So second, boosted results. So what does this mean? We want to make the artists' lives better. So how does this actually work? It's because we have to come together to understand that being an artist is a very, very difficult thing. There's a lot of stigma surrounding these occupations, right? What this looks like is like parents not encouraging or even not even supporting their kids when they say they want to be an artist in the future. This is because parents think that being an artist doesn't bring honor to the family. It's not as well paying. It's very difficult to get clients. It's not like the famous jobs. It's not like the jobs like being a doctor or being a lawyer or being an accountant, this and that, right? To the people who are brave enough to take part in this field, recognition is very, very important to them in order to survive in this cruel world because that gives them like the main source of revenue, right? They need the proper resources in order to survive. And because the cost of living is very, very high, and what state government is doing is actually they're disincentivizing these people from even being artists. Imagine living in a world where no one would dare to even draw a portrait. No one would dare to even publish their poems. No one would dare to even make new music. How boring would that be, right? Now,
Why, please?
it's already almost 7. So site government is basically feeding into this stigma of being an artist. So basically what they're doing is what this means is you will go hungry on the streets because it's a tough job and that has very, very low pay. And this is not the message that we want to bring to our future generation. This is not the message that we want to bring to our passionate artists in our world today. Not to mention, right, how large corporations, they only pay attention to these big awards and these legitimate articles when scouting for their next collaboration, right? It is very unlikely for them to go and scroll their Twitter and see, hey, someone commented good things about this person, let's hire this person. No, this will not happen, right? If we don't have this means, A, it will be a very, very difficult process when it comes to scouting talents. And B, large corporations will have the lesser incentive to even produce higher quality production because there is no objective means as to what the people want and what the people need in the entertainment industry. With this, I've told you and disproved their case on how they say, oh, we want everyone's voices to be heard. But then they say, oh, no, cannot. You're manipulating and you're buying votes. Your opinion is not good. This is totally contradictory and this totally doesn't make sense, ladies and gentlemen. Now, we also told you as to how we prove and how we better address the issue of hate speech, right? Because hate speech is not mutually exclusive on both sides. And we also told you how we create a world where art is appreciated. With this, I end. Thank you.
Speaker spoke for 8 minutes and 26 seconds. Next, let's invite Deputy Prime Minister to begin her speech.
Am I audible? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sir Speaker. A very good morning to Mr. Speaker, esteemed timekeepers, Speaker of the Opposition, ladies and gentlemen. Before I proceed with our arguments to convince you the motion for today must stand as it is, allow me to specify my role. I will rebut the arguments presented by the opposition and present two more arguments. The opposition speaker mentioned that people that know these awards will gain recognition, and with no recognition, you cannot continue in the art industry. However, art in our definition means expression of creative talent. So when you do art, you are basically passionate about it. And when you're passionate about it, you will have the incentive to improve. So not everything is depending on these awards that have been given by other people. And these awards, and oftentimes that when one artist is hoped to gain these kinds of awards, and however they don't, the fans are often let down by the artist. And think about the pressure that it has on the artist. The artist would be facing so much criticism and stress that it would greatly harm their mental health. Moving on, when the government team mentioned that recognition is important for these artists, however, the opposition team never tried acknowledging that there are two types of recognition, including being infamous, and the criticism that are coming from these influential organizations can greatly harm your arts career. And this recognition coming from the formal criticism of these influential incorporations would greatly affect your art career, that it doesn't encourage you anymore, and you are confined to think that art is just one thing. And I will explain that further in my argument. Yes?
Can you please explain how that is not mutually mutually exclusive to our side, and how you don't have that as well?
Can you please repeat the question?
You mentioned about how there's going to be very bad feedback on our side of the house. Can you please explain to why that is mutually exclusive to our side and how you don't have that as well?
The opposition team is basically trying to encourage formal criticism that can harm the career of an artist, and they are encouraging this, that this can harm the artist's career to the end. But however, when we don't encourage this formal criticism, we are just from influential incorporations, we are just encouraging informal criticism, and not from these big companies that can greatly end your career. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to present two more arguments to further convince you that this House prefers a world in which there is no formal criticism and awards for art, as we believe that art is abstract and therefore shouldn't be confined into a limited scope where creativity is not encouraged. Our second argument is based on the keyword encouragement. Namely, the formal criticism and awards can discourage the development and improvement of the artist to be more creative. With public, official, and formal criticism, you're discouraging them in a way that these artists will lose hope and faith in themselves to continue their career. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a judgmental and rejected. This is a judgmental, influential society that we live in. The formal criticism that from one can lead to another. the criticism coming from an influential corporation can greatly influence the opinion of the majority and greatly affect the career of these artists. When an artist gains criticism, it discourages them to continue their career, as art is defined as this or that. As art, as according to the opposition team, art is defined as this or that because formal when art is actually abstract and wide, and art can be anything and anywhere. Thinking about the weight that rejected, thinking about the weight that the formal criticism has on one artist, the public criticism of one leads to another. One day the whole world adores your art, and the next you put aside because of public criticism, and now everyone criticizes your work, and you are immediately down. Its mental health also goes into pieces, and you're discouraging them to continue their passion in art. Art is a passion, and it is as an expression of creative talent. So by public criticizing your art, you're basically limiting them to express their creativity. Our third argument is based on keyword confinement, namely, rejected, art is abstract. By formally criticizing and giving awards, you're confining art into one thing, when art can be anything. Relating back to our definition, art is an expression of creative talent, and by confining art into one thing, you're confining the expression of creative talent, just like I said. As my Prime Minister has said, perception of art varies between or one and another. People can have different definitions of whether this art is good or bad. So by public criticizing one thing, you're discouraging the artists themselves. The opinion from these influential corporations does not actually help for your self-improvement, but not to where you're limiting the artist's career whole as public criticism. There is no such thing as universal good or bad art. But with formal criticism, you're telling the society that this art is universally good or bad. And you're telling them that art is one thing and art is not abstract. Art must be this and art must be that. Formal criticism is confining art into a limited scope where creativeness cannot be expressed. With informal criticism, you're not limiting art into a scope, you're not confining art into one thing, and therefore increasing their creativity. Ladies and gentlemen, here today I've presented two solid arguments and further substantiate my case on our stand that this House prefers a world in which there is no formal criticism and awards for art, as we believe that art is abstract and therefore shouldn't be confined into a limited scope where courage. With this, I beg to oppose. Thank you.
Speaker spoke for 8 minutes and 43 seconds. To continue, let's invite Deputy Leader of Opposition to begin his speech.
Okay. Can you hear me? I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. You see, first of all, there is a contradiction, the whole debate of their case on side government. So first of all, inside government first speaker, they call us the minority, the judges minority. And then somehow, and they also talk about how we want everyone to be heard, how we don't want art to be limited. And they are actually rejecting our side, rejecting the side of minority. How is that not limiting art to a certain level. You only want majority to be heard, and you are talking about how you are the majority, which is also false. Why? Because you need to understand formal criticism. There is not only one or two or three people, or three formal critics in this whole world. There are thousands of formal criticism. How is that representing minority? There are many people with many different opinions, different people have different form of criticism. And also you talk about how we are affecting mental health. No, you are affecting mental health, because you see, in your world there are also people who doesn't like your art, and people can also say, oh, I don't like your art. But how is that different from ours? Because you see, we are not hate, because formal criticism has a format with justification that are valid as opposed to your side, where in informal criticism rejected, people can just say malicious contents with no constructivity to improve. Okay, for example, say after this you lost this debate, and then your mother, who does not know how to debate, will say, okay, you are bad because you did not read this. She doesn't know how to debate, but she just said that how bad you are. There is your world where there is no formal criticism. But what if after this you lose and the adjudicator gives you constructive feedback? There is formal criticism, which makes you improve how to become a better debater after this. Now, after that, you can also, after that, you also said how formal criticism doesn't make people improve. How do you respond to the study of literature, where they spend years learning how to analyze content? Years that they study art, they study literature, they is studying art. How is that useless? How is that not useful in improving yourself to become a better artist, to become a movie maker, become better literature writer? How are you saying it is unnecessary and illegitimate? If you don't answer this, then you already failed in this debate in that area. Okay, now.
Your eye, please.
Yes, sure.
How do you improve creativity? Can you explain?
How do we improve creativity? Because I have told you already that we represent many different people, unlike you, who only say, okay, we only favor the majority and not the minority. But no, we have criticism from thousands of different people, and just because the majority it criticize people and say, okay, this movie is good. But there is also minority, formal criticism from minority, where they say, this is bad, but it is still constructive. Just like my example just now, even though you lose after this, and then people, the educator will give you bad formal criticism about how bad you are, but it still improve you as a better debater, for you to join a better competition next time. That is how formal criticism improves you. Okay, now, I will give you two arguments. My first argument is how we improve art as a whole. Now, who does this affect, this formal criticism and awards? Artists and consumer, they are the one who are affected. Firstly, artists, it gives them pointers, which is making them improve. How? Because what does government work looks like? Okay, if you are a small artist in government work, asking your best friend, you want to put out your artwork to the public, and then you ask your best friend, hey man, how does my artwork looks like? And then he says, yeah, kind of good, but he doesn't know anything about art. And then you proceed to put your artwork for the public to see, and then only to get shot down, rejected. And then this will also affect your mental health, because you see, why? The opinion of your friend does not represent the opinion of what art truly is. Formal criticism gives you what you should follow, no, rejected. And then in this case, formal criticism is like in the art classes. This is also formal criticism because it follows the metric standard of what is said by the majority, what is good. And formal criticism, it is also say, okay, teaching you how to become a better artist. Okay, in art class, for example, in your art exam, and then you want to improve on your art subject, on what project you want to do, of course you will refer to your teacher for ask for formal criticism, and then following that formal criticism, you will improve to become a better artist. And there is artists. And then also another thing, how award is making us much better the art world as a whole. Why? Because it gives people motivation, gives people incentive to become to make better art. Okay, how? Because you see, human is competitive by nature. With the existence of an award, artists work harder to pursue the peak of art. Okay, unlike in your side, is you just say, okay, people make for fun and all this. No, there's nothing wrong with that. But the problem is, nobody is pursuing the peak of art. Nobody is challenging that top of the world. Nobody is saying that, okay, Nobody is actually saying that this is the most, nobody is trying to make the most beautiful piece of art for the world. So even though you are saying, but even if I'm telling you all your site is actually, all the benefits exist in your site, which is doesn't exist at all, but still exists that the fact that you will limit the pursuit of art, and you will limit creativity, because nobody wants to pursue art for real. No one is motivated as much as in our side, which is why you are actually the ones who are limiting the art world. And before I move on to my, before I elaborate more, sure, please defend yourself. Yeah, no defending. Okay, said. So how does formal criticism affect the consumer? Okay, now, like I said before, formal criticism gives you a pointer on how you want to appreciate art. Okay, so what if me, I don't know anything about art, and then I want to see a movie, right? And then I want to see, okay, I see this movie called, for example, Titanic, but I'm too young or too inexperienced to see what is actually very good about this movie. So I look up at formal criticism, and then I see, oh, actually, at this point, that is how we appreciate movie. And then from that on, I know how to appreciate movie. And if I see movie with similar qualities, I can know, oh, actually, this is a high quality movie. That is how formal criticism improves the knowledge of the consumer, which will look at art at a more subjective standpoint, is at a much more knowledgeable standpoint. And my second argument, how we give prestige to the art world. See, without formal criticism, there is no standard for the art, okay? Because they don't want the, for example, even though it is contradiction on their side, they don't want this company, the big companies, even though they want majority, they don't want companies, okay? Even though this, and then without standard, okay, there is no formal recognition by the public. And then without standard, and then without that, meaning there is no prestige. How? Give for example, skateboarding, the sports skateboarding. Now, nobody even look at it. Nobody takes it seriously. Nobody cares until Tokyo 2020. Tokyo 2020 was the first time for skateboarding to become an official sport. And now, skateboarding has been given much more recognition. Everyone wants to get into skateboarding because it is already recognized as an official sport. Now, what if in your world, like I said before, without formal criticism, art is not recognized by the public, recognized by the metric, not recognized by the metric standard of the world, without an award and all that. Now, nobody wants to take art seriously. They just think, oh, it's just kids play. That's it. That is what will happen in your world. And like I said before, you said, that is how we improve art and give prestige to the art world with this artistic speech. I would like to say that we propose this, we oppose this motion proudly today.
Speaker spoke for 8 minutes and 6 seconds. To continue, let's invite Government Whip to begin his speech.
Thank you, Sir Speaker. A very good morning to Mr. Speaker, esteemed timekeepers, speakers of the opposition, ladies and gentlemen, members of the House. We from the government would like to uphold the motion today, which is this House prefers a world where there is no formal criticism and awards for art, as we believe that art is abstract and therefore shouldn't be confined into a limited scope where creativity is not encouraged. Now I'm going to address the rebuttals they proposed against us. So the first speaker of the opposition, they mentioned how it's contradictory that we want individual perceptions, but we don't want formal criticisms and formal awards. However, we're not saying that these people, they can't have their own criticism and awards. It's just that it's not done in a formal way. These judges in this small organization, they can still give their criticism and awards through informal ways, so that they don't force the narrative that this particular art is good or bad on the majority of the population. In the second speaker also mentioned, no, thank you. Also mentioned how we only want the majority, that's the population, to be heard. We don't want the judges of this organization to be heard? And again, it's the same answer. No, we're not and their awards shouldn't be heard. We're just saying that they shouldn't give it in a formal way. They can still give it in an informal way because they need to understand that what they think is true is not what others think is true. They might think that this art is good, but others might think that this is bad. Their voice, these judges' voice in this small organization, their voice are still going to be heard in an informal way. Now, yes, accepted.
Can you please explain to us what's the difference between formal and informal?
Formal criticism and awards are awards and criticism that that are given by a prestige and influential organization like Grammy Awards, like the Oscars, while informal are just individual opinions. For example, I think that this art is good. That person A thinks that this art is bad. This is informal criticism and perception. These are their individual perception. Now moving on to my rebuttals. In their third argument, they mentioned skateboarding as an example, how after skateboarding being started to be recognized, it's a good sport and people like to skateboard. I think this is quite irrelevant because skateboard is physical while art can be both abstract and physical. And by the way, we're not talking about sport recognition here, but we're talking about formal criticism and awards of art. In their second argument, they mentioned how if there are no formal criticism, no thank you. If there are no formal criticism and awards for art, then it's going to affect the artists because the artists, they don't get these formal criticisms and awards. So therefore they don't get to improve. For example, in their example, they mentioned how I, for example, can show a friend that the art is good, but I post it on social media, then it's bad. And that just proves our point. It proves that art is not universally good or bad. People can have different opinions. So why should we, through formal criticisms and awards, formally declare that a particular art is universally good or bad? In their second argument as well, they also mentioned how it can affect consumers because consumers can know through formal criticism and awards whether an art is good or bad. And again, art is not universally good or bad. It's good or bad depending on what a person perceives the art as. It cannot be universally good or bad. Now, continuing to, no, thank you. Now, continuing to the first argument provided by the opposition, they mentioned how judges can analyze art and give meanings to art. So they need to publish their analysis through formal criticism and awards for art. However, art cannot be analyzed. You cannot analyze creativity. You can't give meanings to art. There's not a particular meaning to art. Meanings of art are different from people to people. If formal organization give formal criticisms and awards, you're pushing the narrative that a particular art must be this meaning and cannot have other meanings. And that is just untrue because arts have different meanings. They also mentioned how formal organizations, they give criticism and awards, they are recognizing the artist and they're validating the artist. However, I would like to point out that this is just a recognition by a small minority in a small organization. Side government failed to prove to us how formal criticism and awards represent the recognition of the majority of the people. Thirdly, they mentioned how without this recognition, without this formal criticism and awards by these prestige organizations, artists would somehow stop growing. They will not have the will to continue to do art. However, if we don't have recognition for these artists, would artists really wouldn't want to do art again? This is illogical because you do something not because you get recognized for it. You do something because you have passion for it. If you like art, no, thank you. If you like art, you're going to continue to do it. Now I'm going to proceed to my summarization. Here, I would like to reaffirm our stand based on our arguments. With all due respect, sirs and madams, our first argument is based on the keyword individual perception, namely, formal criticism and awards for art represents only the perception of the minority in a particular organization, not the individual perception of the society as a whole. Formal criticism and awards only represents the minority's perception. Formal criticism and awards ignore the diverse perception by other groups of people, also known as the majority of the people. Some people might think that art is good, while formal criticism says that the art is bad. So is the art good or bad? The art is good for some people, but bad for some people. It really depends on your perception of the art, not just by what a particular group is saying and, oh, this art must be good because this group is saying so. On a side note, we also presented that these formalizations, their formal criticisms and awards might be manipulated. Maybe they might be bribed, so their formal criticisms and awards might not be valid. Our second argument is based on the keyword encouragement, namely, the formal criticism and awards can discourage the development and improvement of the artist to be more creative. It all boils down to the creativity and essence of art. People are going to be discouraged to continue art. Informal criticisms and awards don't discourage as it don't affect the artists. Artists are going to continue to explore the creativity of art in their own ways as there are no boundaries in art. Our third argument is based on the keyword confinement. Namely, art is abstract. By formally criticizing and giving awards, we're confining art into a limited scope when art can be anything. With formal criticism and awards, you're telling society that art is universally good or bad. You're confining art into a limited scope when art can be anything and there are no boundaries and art should be confined. Is creativity confined? No. If you have formal criticisms and awards, it's going to increase creativity and not confining it into a limited scope. Ladies and gentlemen, with that being said, we from the government would like to ask this House to uphold the motion today, which is that this House prefers a world in which there is no formal criticism and awards for art, as we believe that art is abstract and therefore shouldn't be confined into a limited scope where creativity is not encouraged. Thank you very much.
Speaker spoke for 9 minutes and 11 seconds. Let's invite Opposition Whip to begin his speech.
Hello, am I audible and visible? Okay, thank you. Okay. Wait, yeah. Let me set up my timer. You guys can just POI me in the chat and interrupt my speech because I'm okay with that. Okay, so wait, yeah. Okay, I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. So today, if we are to follow the rule of side government today, we actually won't be having a winner or loser in today's debate because of how debate is actually something very subjective. And then we cannot let things be decided by our respected adjudicators because they are not actually the whole world. And then we cannot say that that's the true decision. And then, so therefore, we cannot win or lose because this is something subjective. If that's what we are to follow of the government's work. And now, so two things I would like to call out first before I start my rebuttals and clashes. So first of all, formal award doesn't mean that some art is universally good or some is universally bad, but it serves as a platform for people to get heard. And also, formal award is not only limited to one section or one source. It doesn't mean that the best movie award cannot have few sections like best sound system or best cinematography. And then there are also multiple formal awards. Like you have the Golden Globe Award. At the same time, you have your Oscars and Grammys as well. It doesn't mean that if they win Oscars and Grammy, they will win Golden Globe or whatever. And also, they've also framed their debate in a way that our side only has formal credit. They also frame the debate in a way that our side only has formal criticisms or what, and then there are no other opinions being taken into account when these public comments exist on both sides of the world. The only difference is that without formal criticisms and awards on the other side of the house, voices of the public becomes bigger, and that's the main source that is available for people to decide on how on like big companies or whatever people decide on which art is better. And we tell you how this is a far worse metric to be used as a mainstream with the lack of studies, like what my first speaker has said. And then we told you they've wrongly debated on this motion today. Okay. Now, before that, let me move on to my rebuttals. So they've talked about three things from their first speaker to last speaker. They've talked about subjectivity, they've talked about manipulation, and then they've talked about how art is going to be stopped and lack creativity. So first thing about subjectivity, we tell you how this is not true. Do understand that these panels are still made up of multiple judges, and they have all have their own taste. Moreover, their studies towards the art itself, and they're more neutral compared to people on the ground who can possibly be fans of a certain artist and just follow whatever, regardless of if their art is good or bad. And they're most likely to get exposed to what people say as well, these judges. So they will have to also have these opinions and take into account of what general public says. Only that they have a know that they are in a bigger platform, they cannot simply create a formal criticism without proper reasoning and structure. And lastly, we might not be able to fully negate the problems of this subjectivity because not everyone can vote for Oscars and Grammy. Like not everyone, the 7.2 billion people can vote. And then we also might lose this clash. But later we'll explain as to why manipulation and recognition still weighs more than subjectivity, and why the subjectivity that the whole side government base their case on, and they tell you why we win the debate. And now we move on to the second thing about manipulation. We tell you how this is not true, and these awards are known for being professional, and they have to be formal in order to get accountability, or else they will lose trust on this public and so on. So there are manipulation is very unlikely to happen. And even if it's true, the scale of it will be very small, and we tell you how the recognition and so on outweighs the little scandals that exist. And then we tell you that this is even far worse on your side, and it also contradicts your side, considering the fact that public criticism and opinions don't have any studies and also based on something. The chances of manipulation by people such as having a bigger fan base are more likely to win when they have bigger fans, they're more likely to win awards because they have bigger fan base and influence. Even if it means that the product isn't as good as the creator, but because they have devoted followers who don't care if they're actually good or bad product, they will just vote into like these people, their artist product, and most likely let them win because of this biasness and a lot of facts, and also maybe because they have a lot of other factors such as because he's a British, and also because he's a British, and then we have to support the British. So regardless of any other countries, if it's a Malaysian being very good, they will still vote for the British because they are British themselves and they want to let their fellow countrymen win the award. So there are manipulation is more likely to happen on your side, and then we flip this argument towards your side. And then they tell you how creativity is going to be stopped and so on.
POI, please.
No, thank you. And we tell you how this art is more likely to be stopped on your side when there is no proper recognition and people are not likely to dive deep into studying the art because they know that it is a very informal stuff. They're more likely to not care at all because they know that it's not a serious stuff. And at the same time, the lack of recognition also means that they will have less fund and budget because bigger companies won't simply base on public comments and then decide their sponsorship. So they will have less fund and budget to try out more costly techniques in the world of art, such as having a better camera and so on. So thank you. So we tell you how more likely or not art will not be creative because they cannot have this budget to do so and also improve on that. So that's why we tell you how art is more likely to be stopped on their side of the house. Now we move on to today's class. So not today's class, and we have to wait to you as to why we tell you how the need of formal criticism as an award is more important. So now I will move on to this clash. And why is it so important? So why are these formal criticisms and awards so important? So proper recognition for their artists. So first of all, they can get their names heard on a bigger scale. And also when they get famous, it increases their ability to create better quality products because they know that they're getting a very big support and also getting more people such as big companies to support them. Competition also increases the standard of creating arts because they know that, oh yes, there's this Grammy award and I'll have to be better than the last winner. So they know that they will have to increase and then they have to come up with more creative ideas. And then when they get this recognition, collaboration can also happen more easily and they can work with people and then get improvements. And also at the same time, we touch on criticism. Criticism also let them acknowledge what people want in life, particularly when they see this formal criticism from big organizations. They will take into account of these opinions more because they know that this is how studies of arts are shown and how general people are see arts as. Okay, and now we tell you why do we need this and what happens if these things never so now we tell you why do we need this, and then how it is, if it never exists, it is bad. And then this is how we tackle on the creativity and innovation part of their speech. So we tell you that the value of art will decrease significantly, and if no formal award is there. So it means that when there no formal award, people would this based on basic public comments and random things, and know that they don't have something or a benchmark to pursue on. It means that they're not taken seriously in the society. So yeah, and also you have to understand how this formal organization is also created as well, because they know that there are a big group of people interested in the field. So more likely or not, they want to unite themselves for better improvement because of this platform, letting all these famous artists group together and know what everyone has, the ideas that everyone has generated. This means that more people can take this as a serious profession, and also means that development studies can happen in this field more likely, because people take it seriously. They're more likely to dive deeply into studying this art and so on. So for example, they would take a look at Da Vinci's drawing, maybe because he might win an award, and then learn from this unique feature, or maybe learn from an award-winning movies for their perfect camera angle placement and so on. For example, the movie in 1917, which wins the award for best cinematography. So they can learn from this and then also grab hold of the technique, and then they use it in future things, and then which imposes creativity, and also let them innovate because they know that that's the benchmark they have to get over. So that's why we tell you we win on this clash for the formal criticism. And now we move on to the best case scenario, and we'll tackle on their best case scenario, which they've never touched on our best case scenario. So now we'll tackle their best case scenario. So what if they get all this recognition they need, and they can garner all this support and funding without this formal awards? They can learn criticism of the public. Even if that's the case, you have a platform. You have, even if that's the case, you have a platform for people to get recognized as whole. There are no platform to recognize people as a whole, no big platform to gather everyone. Less research and development happens on your side, and no less formality, and also less how do we say, funding and so on, because these companies cannot find them. And also you have less scale and speed into getting sponsorship, because these big companies have to look through your art one by one, and sometimes they're not even professionals at it. They have to base on awards and other research. So more likely or not, they are not going to involve themselves in art, which loses your funding and so on. That's why we tell you we way over government in today's debate, and that's why we take today's debate. Thank you.
Speaker spoke for 8 minutes and 42 seconds. Now that we have heard all the three debaters from both sides, 3 minutes will be given to the reply speakers to prepare for their speech. You may start now. invite the reply speaker from opposition side.
Hi, can I be seen and heard clearly? Yeah, thank you. Okay. Begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. Mirror, mirror on the side of the road, side government doesn't deserve this award. And we'll show you how our world is truly the best one. Never been prouder to oppose. Let's go into the problems with side government's world, right? They talked about how they said it should be they said that everything should be in informal way, right? Informal meaning people are able to give their own opinions in the most organic way as possible, right? But you have to understand that people's opinions have no backing. People on the internet are ruthless, and when you and people on the internet are ruthless, and when you magnify their voices, this will make the problem of hate speech even worse in our world, in the world that you are trying to create, right? Secondly, art is not universally good or bad. Look, formal criticism isn't a benchmark for people to think whether art is good or bad. Formal criticism isn't a benchmark for everyone to follow. People are not just going to see this article and automatically think, oh, I thought this film was bad before, but then now I'm gonna think it's good because this article says it's good. Or I see this article saying, oh, this film is bad. Just now I thought this film was very, very good. Now I think it's automatically very bad. This just doesn't make any sense in our world today. Everyone is entitled to their own opinions, right? And you cannot change that with just claiming to be expert in this, right? The fact of the matter is these formal forms of criticism is only there so that big corporations know what actually they should follow and know what actually they should improve on, because the people who write these formal criticisms are people who spend a lot of their life trying to learn and trying to understand what is the true method and metric of actually analyzing this. Because understand, there's a lot of forms of art, right? Art is a subject in school. Art is an industry that people can jump into, like occupation. And art also can be something for fun, right? The art is not limited to drawing or like drawing a picture of a village home and the sun in the corner of the paper when you were 4 years old. You can analyze art. There's so many things that goes on in art, and you cannot and when you put art on the platform, when it is brought into industries, right, there will be people judging you and judging your creativity. So this world of rainbows and butterflies that side government is trying to push to us will just not happen. Okay, now they talked about how everything is going to be okay, right? But let me actually paint you a picture of how these both words will look like at the end of the day, since this house prefers motion and no one has actually come up and done that until now, right? On side government's world, art is creativity. People have a lot of discourse talking about this piece of art, a lot of individual perspective and a lot of less manipulation somehow, because there'll be no award shows, there'll be no competitions, nothing. You're just going to put everything out there, people are just going to see it, people are just going to comment. But they don't understand that there are a lot of issues when it comes to people who don't know anything about art. They're just going to say, oh, I don't like this, and then a lot of people are just going to keep supporting that, supporting that, and this ultimately is not what we want, because there is no balance, ladies and gentlemen. On our side, when we have formal criticism, when we have awards, we are not only giving them incentives for them to work harder, we are not only giving them better job opportunities, we are giving them a way for them to understand that this is what art should truly be, right? This is what art should become. This is what we have to do to make our art better, so that we know that next time I am going to be creative on this aspect. And this is very important, because if you have a world where you're just listening to the public opinions of people who don't even know anything, you're going to create a very not educated world, and this is not what we want. at the end of the day. So if you want a world where we don't have to keep on listening and succumbing to society standards, if you want a world where everything is more objective, more objective and less about that feeling and emotion, where something that is more prim and proper, side with side opposition, never been prouder to oppose. Thank you.
Speaker spoke for 4 minutes and 19 seconds. Next, let's invite the reply speaker from government side.
Thank you, Sir Speaker. Good day to Mr. Speaker, speakers of the opposition, and members of the House. We from the government would like to ask this House to uphold the motion today, as we believe that art is abstract and therefore shouldn't be confined into a limited scope where creativity is not encouraged. Firstly, I would like to highlight the opposition's weaknesses and fallible arguments. The opposition first misleading point is that the opposition first speaker mentioned that you can gain recognition with award shows, but you can still gain recognition through other ways. Like our generation right now, we use TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and even more. Why does it have to be award shows? Like TikTokers still get promoted and get income, right? The second misleading point is the second speaker keeps saying how using skateboard as an example to gain recognition because it gained more recognition after it became a sport. But how does that relate to art? Sports and arts is a very different thing. It's so irrelevant because skateboard is physical while art is both abstract and universal. We're not talking about sport at all. We're talking. And may I know if formal criticism and awards are accepted? What is the ultimate criteria in judging an artwork? There is no criteria in judging art. And other technical issues I would like to point out is they had a really confusing debate structure. And other than that, they ask our third speaker how to differentiate informal and formal criticism. They obviously did not listen to our definition or acknowledge and understand our arguments and solid examples. If you don't believe me, you can search Google yourself after this debate. And they also turn off their cameras when they're not speaking. It seems really suspicious. With these misleading arguments by the opposition, it is proven that our arguments must stand as it is and be accepted by the members of the House. Ladies and gentlemen, here I would like to reaffirm our stand based on our arguments with all due respect, sir. Our first argument is based on the keyword individual perception, namely formal criticism and awards for art represents only the perception of the minority in an organization, not the individual perception of the society. Our second argument is based on the keyword encouragement, namely the formal criticism and awards can discourage and the development and improvement of the artist to be more creative. Our third argument is based on a keyword confinement, namely art abstract and by formally criticizing and giving awards. You're confining art into a limited scope when art can be anything. Members of the House, here today, I have presented government's rebuttal and reaffirm our case to show that this House prefers a world in which there is no formal criticism and awards for art, as we believe that art is abstract and therefore shouldn't be confined into a limited scope, for creativity is not encouraged. With this, I rest my case. Thank you.
Speaker spoke for 4 minutes and 10 seconds. That is the end of our debate. Speakers may virtually cross the floor and shake hands. Adjudicators and the debaters. We will head back to the main room for the next announcement. Thank you.
All right, basically, all the participants, please leave the rooms, or as well as the observer, the judges will be stay in the room. Only the judge should be in the room, right? So everyone's head back to the room, the main room, and we will announce the result there.
Thank you for the debate, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, do we submit individual ballots on the form?
The link, I share you the link already. Right.
As in, do we discuss first then submit, or like we just submit first?
Submit first.
Okay. Okay, I've submitted already.
Yeah, I think pretty obvious. wait for Greg.
Sorry, give me a sec. I'm still sitting on my phone.
Okay, no problem.
Actually, Alex, why don't you use the tabby cat ballot function?
Yeah?
The tabby cat ballot function.
So
you basically send out the URL and we can fill the ballot in directly then.
You can say to individual judges, is it? Or help? I thought that it's only chair.
You can, there's a setting that you're using Calico tab, right?
Yes.
Yeah, there's a setting that you can have individual ballots.
Okay, because previously I used Heroku, cannot. Try many times. I don't know how to share like individual ballot. That's why.
Yeah, it's a recent feature that's released a couple months ago.
Oh, okay, cool. Next time we'll try that. We'll try that. Right, perfect.